Hey guys, welcome to my Fallout inspired speed build in The Sims 4. If you are new to my channel, this is actually only my second time uploading a Sims build, and all of my other videos have been in Fallout 76, things that I have built in Fallout 76. So I thought it would be really appropriate to kind of do a mixture of the two games, a Fallout inspired post-apocalyptic kind of world in The Sims, and I'm really happy with how it ended up turning out, and I have lots of different things to say about the whole process as we get into the video. So let's do that. Let's get into the rest of the video. So the first thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was this initial footage of me trying to figure out what I was doing. Obviously, I had no idea what I was doing, and that's why this footage that you'll see in the beginning is a little bit weird and choppy. Initially, I was going with the multi-building idea, which is obviously what I ended up using in the end, but in this beginning part I had no idea what I was doing, so I started working on this singular building idea, and I didn't end up liking that, and then I just ended up like questioning, why am I even recording this if I don't know what I'm doing? So I decided to just stop recording. And so this is what I ended up coming up with when I was finally free from the pressure of knowing that I was recording myself building. So I just started recording again once I had this kind of finished shell idea figured out, and I just kind of set up the different styles of the buildings. I put on wallpaper and the floors, well, not floors yet, I guess, but I just basically set up the buildings the way that I wanted them to be. And here you can see I'm throwing up some photos on the screen of my inspirations for each of the different buildings. And I actually went into the game in Fallout 76 to take these photos myself. I ended up taking them after I had already finished the completed build, so I wasn't using these as reference specifically. I just had these kind of buildings in my mind. I've played a lot of Fallout 4 and a lot of Fallout 76, so I kind of was just going from memory and just going from feeling and just creating things that I felt like were Fallout-esque. And one of the things that I personally really think about when I think of Fallout games are the rooftop areas. I have always been drawn to the rooftop spaces. Like every time there's a fire escape, I immediately want to climb it and I want to see what's on top of that building. And so I wanted to include both of those things into this build. And so I have multiple different rooftop spaces where people are living and they've cluttered it up with all their junk. And there's also that tallest white building in the back is only accessible through the fire escape, which I was determined to make happen, and I really love how it turned out. I used the window that functions like a door. I believe it's from, I forget what pack it's from, but I'll put that up on the screen. But it's a window that functions as a door, so the sim can climb in and out of the window, which is really cute. And if you don't happen to have that pack and you download this build, you could just exchange that for a regular door on the fire escape. That would be totally fine as well, but I really loved the idea of using that window. So moving on to the actual footage that you're watching here, at this point I am going through the entire debug menu. Well, not the entire debug menu. I can see that I have filtered it by the werewolves pack specifically, which was an incredibly helpful pack to have and to use in this build. I'll put up on the screen a few of the different packs that I used probably the most in this build, but off the top of my head, I think the main ones that were very helpful for this like scrappy, junky feeling were Werewolves and Strangerville. And then also I know that I used a lot, or I feel like I used a lot of the Get Famous pack as well, which probably seems a little bit odd because if you're not familiar, the Get Famous expansion pack is kind of a like LA kind of world. So it comes with actual Hollywood movie type film set stuff. What am I trying to say? Like props, prop things. So I used a bunch of those in the build as well. That was really helpful. And if there's anything else that I can think of, I'll put it up on the screen, like I said. But I did actually use a ton of different packs for this build, and if you want to know the exact list of the packs, you can check out this build on the Sims gallery. My gallery ID is vapidvalentine, and I'm gonna go more into detail about like the playtesting aspect of it, because I did do some playtesting, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But first, I should talk a little bit about what my building process is, because you can see here that I'll go through the entire list of items and I'll just pull out everything that I think I'm going to want to use, and I'll place it in the general area where I think I'm going to use it, which is why I'm kind of bouncing around the build so much. And then once I have all of the items pulled out that I think I want to use, then I will go back in and kind of fine tune their placement and, you know, edit and figure out, do I actually want that? Do I want something else? But yeah, that's kind of my technique, is I'll just go through the menu once completely and I'll just pull out everything that I want to use. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that I'm on console. I think also part of that has to do with the fact that I'm still kind of new to Sims building. So there's like a ton of items that I've gotten all at once, and I don't necessarily have in my mind everything that I want to use immediately. So I'm still kind of figuring out what is all in the build menu. Like, I still don't even know. Sometimes I'm surprised of items that I find in there. So yeah, that's kind of how I work through it. So a moment ago, I briefly mentioned that I play on console. That is what you are seeing here, is me building on console. And I wanted to mention that specifically because I think it's very uncommon for people to play The Sims on console, or to even think that it's possible. Obviously it is possible because I made this. However, if you are thinking about getting The Sims, I would recommend getting it on PC, simply because you can have mods, you can have custom content, which is amazing. There are some insanely talented people who make the coolest custom content, and I actually have the game on PC as well. I just don't have any of the packs. All of the packs I purchased have been on console, so I feel like I'm kind of stuck in it at this point, which is okay. But I do have some custom content on my PC version, and it's so fun. It's so great. And I could go on and on about console versus PC and custom content and all of that, but I would like to get into the playtesting section of this video, which is very exciting, let me tell you. So basically, I wanted to playtest this build and make sure that if anybody wanted to download it and actually play in it, that it would be possible. And so that's what I did. I created this family of 8 Sims, or a group of Sims, and I kind of made them all have these post-apocalyptic looks. Some of them have like Fallout looks. And unfortunately, Dawn was the first Sim to die in this playtesting session, which ended up resulting in the deaths of a majority of the Sims that I created. I think I only had 3 left by the end of it. But Dawn burned to death. I mean, she overheated to death, I guess, which is a thing. And I didn't notice that happened, and all of the other Sims apparently were smart enough to change into their summer clothes, but she wasn't smart enough. And I'm not being fair, because I'm just realizing that like I was forcing her to do the mural on the wall, so that was actually my fault. I was keeping her occupied so that she couldn't change into her summer clothes. So that one's on me. I'm sorry, Dawn. I'm sorry. Now, Lloyd here, Lloyd, my man, was another issue altogether. I think there were multiple contributing factors to Lloyd's death. And also, I think 2 or 3 Sims died in this fire. At least 2. She died. They died. As the firefighter just cried watching. So this brings up another issue in the build, which is both the firefighter and the Grim Reaper had issues like moving around. So as you can see, no one came to put the fire out. It just eventually went out on its own. And a furry came to watch, I guess, and cry with everybody else, which is totally fine and normal. And I feel like this is a good game that is very fun to play. I just don't know how to play it, I think is what's happening here. Okay, so now we're going to get back to the building, but I do feel like I want to say a few more things about the plate testing issues. Basically, even though all I just showed you was a lot of chaos and death, which is super fun, and I feel like also very appropriate for a post-apocalyptic world, like that is what would be happening. But yeah, other than that, I did go through and playtest all of the different areas. They can use all of the bathrooms, toilets, showers, beds, all of the main things like food. As you saw, Lloyd was definitely able to use that grill on the roof. So there's places for them to do all of the things that they need to do. And again, there's like multiple different areas in the build where your Sims could live, and they're all accessible and usable. And other than that, I can't make any guarantees about how fun it would be to play in this build. I really don't know. It's a huge space, and I don't really know how like feasible it is to have a good playthrough in this build. I think it could be fun. I mean, it was very interesting for me as somebody who doesn't do gameplay. It was quite exciting, to say the least. But that brings me to another point that I wanted to bring up, which is that if you end up downloading this build or any of my builds from the gallery, I would love to hear your feedback on how the playthrough, I don't know how to say things for The Sims, but if you play in my builds, I would like to know what your experience was like, and if you have any suggestions for improvements of things that I have forgotten, or things that didn't function properly, or just overall is bad for gameplay. I don't know. I am very clueless about a lot of that stuff, so I would love to be able to improve by hearing your suggestions and your constructive criticism. So thank you in advance for that. Let me know. Okay, so I know I've been talking over all of this footage of the interior space in this little brick building, and I really wanted to take some time to talk about my inspiration for the side of the building. Each different building has its own like vibe and feeling, and so for this building in particular, my idea was that initially, like pre-war or whatever happened, like before that happened, this building was a bookstore, which is why you'll see all of these shelves with books everywhere. And then I imagined that after everything went crazy, the people moved in here and took it over and kind of made it into like a makeshift bar area. And I guess my idea for this whole area is that it's kind of a little settlement, so I didn't worry too much about like blockading everything in, because I maybe was thinking that the entire neighborhood was blocked in, so like it was safe-ish. You know what I'm talking about? Anyway, I imagined that a lot of these spaces were kind of communal areas, and so this was like a bar area. And then for the upstairs, there is a rooftop space that's connected, which is where the fire was. And then there's also an office, a bathroom, and then for the third floor, there's a little attic bedroom that also leads out onto the middle rooftop. So all of this space is connected to this brick building that is on the side, I guess the left side, depending on which way you're looking at the building. But yeah, so this is all like one connected building. So this footage that you're seeing now is that bedroom that I was talking about that leads out onto the rooftop space. And I had kind of a sim in mind, or like a person in mind for this bedroom, which is why I decorated it the way that I did. It is in my mind, it was kind of like a young adult female sim who was maybe born or brought up after the apocalypse, and so she maybe has this obsession with pre-war teenager kind of stuff. So that's the kind of things that I put in the room. There's a lot of like little toy kind of things, books, games, that kind of stuff, and it's a little bit like it's like a childish room, but it is again for a young adult sim, or that was what I kind of made it for in my head. And so it just looks like they've been collecting all of this like girlish kind of teenager stuff. That's really one of the things that I do a lot with all of my builds, is I usually have like a person in mind who's living in whatever I'm building, or like whatever it's for. I usually have somebody in mind, and that goes for Sims builds as well as Fallout builds that I do. I find that it is really helpful in creating the right atmosphere if you really have a specific person in mind that you're building for, so you can think about, you know, what would they have around, what are they interested in, what kind of design and decor would they have. I find that it's really helpful in trying to kind of pull everything together and make it a cohesive feeling or look, however we're gonna say that. But as you can see, I'm kind of wrapping up the decoration on this little bedroom area, and you can see that I'm kind of pulling out wall decor and kind of placing it around in other places, which is again one of the techniques that I use when I'm building that I talked about earlier. But in a moment here, we're going to be moving on to another part of the building. So this kind of wraps up this whole little chunk here, and we are moving on to this tall white building that's kind of in the back of the whole structure, which ended up being one of my favorite parts of the entire build, and there's a lot of different things going on with it, so I will try to explain it in a way that makes sense, but I apologize in advance if it is a little complicated and weird. But basically, the top 2 floors here are connected, and this is the space that I was talking about that has the fire escape entrance, which you can see here on the outside of the building for a split second there. But for this section that you're seeing me work on, I really wanted to create this broken out wall effect that is very common in Fallout games. There's a lot of destroyed buildings, broken walls, caved in ceilings, like just absolute destruction everywhere that you look. And so in order to create that effect, I just left a gap in the wall right in the middle, and then I used this piece of like broken brick that I found in debug and kind of placed it in on the floor. And then in order to camouflage those straight edges of the walls on either side, I just kind of layered up all of these wall decals that have this cracked look on them, and I use those all over the entire build, but I especially felt like they came in really handy right there to create that effect on the wall. So moving on, here you can see that I am starting to work on decorating this second floor apartment of this white building. And for this space, I wanted to go with this like classic Fallout look. So it's a very mid-century modern, retro, futuristic vibe. I tried to use as much of that blue color as possible, and just a lot of different elements that felt very mid-century to me. And I really like how this space turned out. It's like super cute and very different from anything else in the rest of this build. So each of the spaces really does have its own feeling and its own vibe and style. So that was really fun because it meant that I got to try a lot of different things and a lot of different styles, all of which feel very Fallout to me, but in their own ways. So back to talking about this room that we are decorating in right now. As you can probably see, I had a lot of difficulty trying to figure out which colors I wanted to use, which swatches, which items. I messed around with the colors a million times. I switched things just a ton in this apartment in particular, just because I wanted to get it just right. So that's the majority of what you're going to be watching in this space, is just me changing the colors of things over and over again, and until I found the right things, which eventually I did. And I do really like how it turned out, which it probably looks very different than what you're seeing at the moment, but eventually it comes together, I promise. So, as this footage plays through and you kind of get to enjoy my powers of indecision, if that is a thing that we're going to say, it is a thing that we're going to say because we already said it. But yes, enjoy this footage of me figuring out the rest of this space. And while that's going, I wanted to talk about the basic layout of this part of the build. So, I already mentioned that these top 2 floors are connected, and the entrance for this is the fire escape through the window. Again, if you do download this and you don't have access to that window, you can just replace that with a door. I think there would just be nothing there, or maybe a regular window would be put in its place, but you could just put a door there and that would not be a problem at all. So basically, the pre-war layout for this apartment that I imagined would have been the ground floor would have been the lobby of the apartment building, and then there was a staircase that would go all the way up to the top, and there would be a door on the second floor to go into that apartment, and then there would be a door obviously on the third floor to go into that apartment. Both of them I imagined would be studio apartments. I don't remember if I just said that or not, but and then also at the top floor there is a door to go out onto the rooftop, so like a rooftop access door that was inside the stairwell. And here you can see that I'm actually kind of rearranging the walls to make that work. Originally I had a door inside the apartment building to go out onto the rooftop, but I thought it would be more accurate to have it to have that door be in the stairwell. That just made sense to me. So this is me kind of rearranging the layout in order to make that work. And then of course originally that stairwell would have gone all the way down to the first floor, but I kind of tried to make it appear as though there had been some damage to the staircase, and so it didn't continue all the way down to the first floor. It kind of just stops, and so that's why there's not access from the ground floor anymore. You do have to go through the fire escape. And so what I ended up doing was actually including that ground floor, which would have been the lobby. I broke out a wall and kind of included it to the building that's on the right side of the build on the ground floor. So it's kind of like all one piece together, and I will show that in the footage a little bit later. But to get back to this part of the build for just a second here, what I kind of imagined happened post-apocalypse was that somebody moved in here and they took over the 2 top floors, the second and the third floor. And what they did was they took 2 apartments that had been their own individual apartments, and they decided to use the second floor as their living room, kitchen, dining area, and then using the top floor apartment for their bedroom, which also has the bathroom. And then also something that I'm not sure is in the footage very well, it's kind of hard to see, there's also kind of like a broken out wall through the other side of the stairwell on the second floor, and there's like a makeshift shower in there, and it's like a big storage room. Essentially I just like piled up a bunch of junk in there, so it kind of just goes with the story. Like that whole side of the building, there's just broken walls everywhere, like everything's destroyed. It's kind of just mismatched everything, and yeah, I do really like that feeling though. I like how it turned out in the end. So getting back to this bedroom that I am decorating here, initially I was thinking that I wanted to keep it the same style as the second floor apartment, so that retro, futuristic, mid-century, colorful kind of feeling, and then eventually I just realized like I wasn't feeling that. I wanted to do something else completely. So what I ended up doing was very much inspired by the White Spring Resort in Fallout 76. If you know that game, play that game, you might know what I'm talking about. If you don't, the feeling is very much a little bit more old-fashioned, traditional, a little bit like elegant, a lot of like gold framed photos, and just like a little bit fancier and traditional, I would say. And this is also where I feel like I was having a lot of fun finding little Easter egg type things like this flamingo. And you'll also see some other items. The teddy bear was just in the footage. And out on the rooftop, there's a little gnome there. A little bit later, you'll see an item that I found in the build menu that looks just like a little bobblehead. I don't know actually what it is in the game, what it's meant for, but it looks just like a little Vault Boy bobblehead. It's so cute. And again, you'll see that in a different part of the build. But here's another object that I wanted to make sure to mention, which is, I believe it's called a plane engine, and I'm not sure exactly which pack it's from, but I think it's from Strangerville. And again, I don't know if it is debug or a regular menu item, but I kind of used it to create this broken out wall effect on the ground floor. So there is a kind of stone archway that I used to create the effect that there was maybe a hole in the wall, and I just kind of fit that plane engine right in there. And in my mind, I thought it could be a crashed plane engine, but it also could be a bomb or something like that, which is, you know, there are all kinds of bombs in Fallout. And right here is another really cool object that I found that I was so excited about, which is this kind of military looking truck that is tipped over on its side. So I decided to remove the Jeep, the like more normal looking Jeep that was sitting there, and replace it with this truck. And I kind of created all of this debris and rubble and like used these floor decor items that are like dirt patches and put it under there, just to kind of, you know, give the appearance that like something had blown up here. Something happened there for sure. And that is also something worth mentioning, is that because I am playing on console, I'm very limited in the ways that I can kind of modify the objects. So if I were playing on PC, for example, there are mods that you can have where you can rotate objects. So I could have used that Jeep that I had from the debug menu, and I could have flipped it on its side myself. But because I'm on console, I don't have access to those kinds of mods, and I wish I could. I wish I did, but I don't, so I kind of have to just work with what the game gives me. So that truck was really amazing. And again, I believe that one was also in Strangerville, but I will put up on the screen if that is correct or not. As you can see, we have moved on now in the footage, and I am currently working on this middle section, the middle building, and there are 2 floors. So this is the bottom floor that I kind of was turning into a little crafting area, communal crafting area, and then upstairs you can see here I turned it into like a communal living space. So it's kind of like an open floor plan, living kitchen, and then also beds. And I kind of just imagined that Sims would just kind of crash here when they needed to. I'm not sure that it's somebody's home, but I just imagined that it was whoever needed a place to stay could stay there. So as far as the layout goes for this section of the building, like I said, there is the ground floor area and then this upstairs bedroom area, and that is the only part that is all connected together for this middle chunk of the building. And then the rooftop that is on top of this part of the building, you saw me decorating that a little bit right before this section when I was talking about the truck. And that rooftop has like a little kiddie pool and like a tent, I think, and a bunch of little things. It has like a little shower outside there, and that rooftop is attached to the young adult, girl, sim, teenager kind of childish room that you saw me decorating a little bit earlier. So the layout for this build, I understand, is very like weird and complicated. It's not straightforward, and I understand that that might be weird for gameplay, but for building, for me personally, it was a lot of fun, and I am glad that I did it that way because it makes it a little bit more interesting, that the buildings are connected in ways that you might not expect because, you know, maybe the wall was broken out or the stairs were not functional anymore. So I don't know, I just thought that that was really fun to create, and I hope that it does make it interesting for gameplay. Hopefully it doesn't ruin gameplay, but I would imagine that it might be kind of fun, so I hope so. But anyway, so I kind of mentioned that this building in the middle here, the intention for it was kind of a communal crafting area down on the first floor, and it's also kind of like a marketplace. So people, like a place where people would come and create things and sell things and trade things, that kind of feeling. And then later, the last part of this entire build that we haven't seen yet, there's the building that is right next to this one that is also a crafting area, like a communal crafting space, but it has much more of a military type feel, or Brotherhood of Steel if you're familiar with Fallout games. So these two buildings that are side by side, they have the same kind of intention, but just with completely different feelings. This one is much more homey, and then the other one, again, is a little bit more military. But speaking of Fallout, some of you might be aware of the new Fallout series on Prime, which has been very exciting for a lot of people and has really created a big boost in interest in Fallout games. But I started building this in December of last year, and I'm sure that I knew about the show that was going to be coming out, but it wasn't like a real thought in my mind that I wanted to do a Fallout Sims build, and like that's the reason why. It really was just something that I wanted to do because I thought it would be a good transition between the two games that I enjoy building in. And to be honest, at the time, I was not enjoying building in Fallout 76 at all, which is why I really wanted to make something in The Sims. And so, yeah, I wanted to make a Sims video that would still be interesting, hopefully, to the people that follow me from my Fallout 76 builds. And so here we are. This is what's happening, and it's just very coincidental that the TV show is very popular, and you know everybody is playing Fallout and interested in Fallout, which is super fun. So if you're one of those people who's here because of the show, then hi, welcome. Good to have you. So getting back to the footage here, I have kind of finished decorating this little upstairs space, and I am now working on the actual lighting of it. I had a light in the middle of the room just to kind of illuminate everything while I was working on it, and I have gotten rid of that, and so I'm just adding in lots of little candle lights all over the place and oil lamps, that kind of thing. Which leads me to another point that I haven't really talked about a lot in the build so far, which is lighting and electricity, basically. So you might have noticed that in the spaces that I have decorated so far, some of them, like the brick bookstore bar area, were mostly candlelight and lamp light and not really much electricity, if any at all. And this building that I have been decorating in, as you saw in the upstairs room, it was mostly candlelight or all candlelight and lanterns. And this space here on the ground floor, I think I used like mostly electricity. I actually put like lights on the ceiling and stuff. So basically what I'm trying to say is there is a mixture of candlelight and electricity throughout the build in the different areas. And what I was kind of thinking of in my mind is that certain buildings in the area would have generators, other people wouldn't have generators, and so yeah, there's just kind of a mix. And another thing that I did want to mention that's related to this is that at the time of building this, I did not have the Eco Lifestyle pack, but I ended up getting it later on. And when I was looking through the items, I really was wishing that I had it while I was building this because there were a ton of things that I thought would have come in really handy. One of those things being generators. I'm not really sure how functional generators are in the game and like what that means for the game, but I did see them in the menu. And there's other items that were kind of like off-grid living items that I thought would be really great for this type of build. So I just wanted to mention that because I do think it would be a good addition for this build, but again, it was not something that I had at the time. So unfortunately, I'm missing those items, but again, in my mind, I was imagining that some of the areas would have generators, others wouldn't, and so that kind of explains why I decorated it the way that I did. I do feel like I'm probably missing a lot of packs that would have come in handy for this build. I definitely don't have every pack that is available, and I'm sure that there are some items that I'm missing that would have been great for this build, but I just did the best that I could with what I had, and I think it turned out fine, right? I don't know, I think it's fine. So one of the things that I haven't really talked about yet is the lot that I used for this build. I believe the lot name is in the top left side of the screen while I'm building, and it's a location that is found in San Myshuno. And you might have seen actually earlier in the footage that there is a lot that is right next door to this one, and I actually went into that one before I started working on this, and I kind of demolished whatever was there, and I kind of wanted to create like a sister lot to this one, but I didn't actually build anything on it. I just kind of destroyed it and I made it look really junky with piles of scrap everywhere and like a debug building that's sitting over there because I just thought it would look weird if I had this Fallout world building sitting right next to a perfectly clean, pristine building of some kind. So I made sure that I went in and kind of destroyed that one as well, and I think these two lots together are actually really nice for this kind of a world because they're just so close to each other and it just worked out perfectly. And I think that if I were to do another Fallout build in the future, I would like to make one for that lot. So getting back to the footage that we're watching, I am just going to be finishing up the final details on this middle building, and we are going to be moving on to the last part of the build, which is this building on the right side that I kind of in my mind imagined would be another communal crafting space, but again with a more military feel or Brotherhood of Steel kind of vibe. And so I found all of these little posters for the walls that look very much like Fallout posters, and so I put those all over the place. I have some cots for people to sleep in. There is a bunch of like computer desk areas and crafting bench areas, and then there's also a back room that has kind of like a cooking area, not a cooking area, but like a little kitchen, like a kitchenette kind of space with a fridge, and that is the room that has the wall broken in by the plane engine, and you will see that in a moment. But as I'm sure you can see, this is an example of what I was talking about earlier when I was saying that I really chose a different feeling for each part of the build. So this one has a completely different look than all of the other spaces in the build, which I really like. And it was really fun to be able to include all of these different styles in one build. I really enjoyed it. So since we are nearing the end of the video, I just really wanted to say thank you, first of all, to everyone who has watched up until this point. I really appreciate it. And I also really wanted to say thank you to everyone who has hung around, even though it's been a few months since my last video upload. And especially I wanted to say hello and welcome to all of the new people who have been subscribing in the last few months. I know this may not be the content that you were waiting for because it is The Sims and it's not Fallout 76. I mean, at least if you're listening to me saying this right now, you've watched the whole video, possibly. So, maybe it is what you were looking for. I'm not really sure, but I hope that it is, and it was, and that it will be in the future, because I intend to do, more Sims builds, more Fallout builds, possibly Elder Scrolls Online builds, and I just appreciate you guys being around for the ride. That's not the way that we say that, but we're gonna say it that way today. But the last thing that I wanted to share before we kind of move into the final completed footage of the build is a few different places that you can find me online. I occasionally stream on Twitch, so if you would like to follow me over there, my name is vapidvalentine, and that is the same name that you will find me on Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, as well as my newly created Patreon. Now, I really put off creating a Patreon for a long time because I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to offer there. But recently, I decided to just start uploading content that is kind of more behind the scenes, sneak peeks of things that I have been building. And I've already uploaded my first Patreon exclusive video, which is actually a build that I did years ago, and I just never uploaded it to my channel for whatever reason, and so it's just been sitting there, and I decided, you know what, that might be a fun thing to add because it's probably something that you haven't seen from me yet. And I do have a few other older builds that I thought it would be fun to upload there because they're not something that I would want to put on my channel at this point, but I still would like to share them, and I just feel like that would be the perfect place to do that. But in addition to some of the older builds that I mentioned, I obviously want to include more current content of things that I am working on right now. Even though there are sometimes longer breaks between my video uploads on YouTube, that doesn't mean that I am not still always building. I really always am. And so I just thought that it would be the perfect place to kind of share all of those kinds of things with you guys. And of course, if you do decide to follow me over there or become a member, I would really love to hear from you on what it is you would like to see. So please leave me some feedback, and I look forward to seeing you there. But we have now reached the end of all of the decorating and building footage that I have, and what you are seeing now is the final completed build that is exactly as it will be if you were to download this from the gallery. And basically I just made some changes. It's going to look a lot different than all of the footage that you just saw because this is after I did the adjustments for the playtesting that I did to just make sure that everything was functional, or mostly everything is functional, and that all of the spaces are accessible and all of that stuff. And in addition to that, I also just kind of went in and added a ton of different extra details, fine-tuned everything, and just made all of the spaces exactly what I wanted them to be. So you'll notice as I kind of go through the build here that you'll see it looks quite a bit different than the way it did in the build footage itself. And also at the very end of this video, I will have screenshots that give a more first-person view of the build. So if that is something that you're interested in, stick around. But I basically wanted to just kind of include one last little walkthrough of the entire build in its completed state so that you could see all of the different areas, and especially like a couple areas here that weren't really shown very much or at all in the build footage. I didn't include all of the building obviously in the footage, and part of that is just because the build itself was so massive and there was so much going on with it that it wasn't really feasible to record every single moment of building it. So yeah, I did do quite a bit off camera as well. And I think the next time I attempt to do a speed build, I will probably make something a little bit smaller and a little bit more manageable, and that way I will be able to include all of the footage, hopefully, and I will plan it out a little bit better so that I won't have to leave anything out. But regardless, I really hope that you have enjoyed coming on this journey with me to create this Fallout inspired, post apocalyptic kind of neighborhood build. I had a ton of fun making it. Like, I genuinely had a really good time. It was there was so much to do that like I really couldn't get bored with it, and I love how every part of it has a different vibe. And I honestly would really like to do another build like this in the future, another Fallout inspired Sims build. Let me know if that is something that you would be interested in seeing. And I'll be honest, my first Fallout game was Fallout 4, and as soon as I discovered the settlement building in the game, I basically did nothing else for a while. And I used to joke that it was basically a post apocalyptic Sims game for me. And I feel exactly the same way about Fallout 76, which is why I originally created my channel in the first place, was to share all of the things that I love to build in that game. And so it just feels really fitting to me to now be making a Fallout inspired build in the Sims game instead of like a modern kind of build in a Fallout game. But the video is ending now, so I gotta go, but I really hope that you have enjoyed this build and the video, and I appreciate you watching. If you have, which if you're listening to me, then you have, so I appreciate you and thank you, and I hope you have a lovely everything. I will see you next time. Bye.